really feeling into that goal that you want to achieve, where you want to be, how you want to be, how you want to feel.
So, welcome, good evening. Thanks for joining today. It's another Lean by Nature call. And I'll like to invite first to uh, be with ourselves for a few moments, take a few deep, long breaths, and just think about gratitude. Uh, what are we grateful about today? I think that is something that really resonates very beautifully within. And those who are joining, thank you for joining. We are just doing a check-in right now, and I'll request. I'll just make sure the participants are on mute so that we have minimum background noise. But thanks for joining. And while we're doing the check-in, I just want to invite you to just spend a moment in gratitude and think about what are the things we are grateful about today. So maybe we can just close our eyes for a few moments, just arrive in this room today where we're going to talk about lean by nature and think about what are we grateful about today. So while you're ready to share, I would invite you to put your gratitude on the chat, and I'll go ahead and start with myself. Today, I'm grateful about the new learnings that are coming on from the universe to me, the new thoughts that are emerging, and the truth that is unveiling itself. It was probably hidden behind the clouds, and as I'm reading some of the stuff that I've been looking at right now, I think new aspects of information is coming to me. So I think I'm really grateful to the universe for that. So I'd ask people to just put in on the chat what are they grateful about. And Elizabeth, do you want to share what are you grateful about today?
Yes, I would love to. Um, yes, I am grateful today about so many things. I'm grateful for my body and how it's working and how it continues to just support my all the things that I want to do. It's that the body needs to work in order for me to be able to fulfill all my um, yeah, tasks and things that I want to bring into the world. So I'm really grateful for that, and for the wind and the clouds that are covering the whole sky again, which is not very welcoming, but still I'm grateful that they're here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I'd like to invite those who have joined, just put in on the chat, what are you grateful about? And as we probably will begin now because it's almost 5 minutes past the hour. So once again, welcome you to the next edition of Lean by Nature calls. And this is really a space where we talk about sustaining the improvements, whether it is in our professional life as or it is in our personal life. I think that's the framework of these calls. Uh, there has been so many tools, techniques behind lean working that has been prevalent in the organizations that has helped organizations to sustain improvements for so long. So this is a space where we talk about those improvements and how we can use some of those learnings to improve our own lives, whether it is the processes that we are dealing with in the professional environment or our own life. Whether we talk about three aspects of our personal improvement. We talk about lean structure, how to be physically fitter. We talk about lean thinking, how to be mentally stronger, and we talk about lean processes, how to get rid of our old bad habits and probably inculcate a few good ones. So I think these are the continuous improvement cycle that we try to follow in our personal life as well as our professional life. And the endeavor of these calls is to discuss the lean quality improvement principles and the tools and technologies that have been prevalent to improve upon these aspects. The other aspect that we talk about in these lean by nature calls is the nature connection, and that's where my colleague Elizabeth comes in. She has been into quality testing in her earlier life, if you will, and while she was working, and since last few years she has been more into nature aspects, and she has spent so much time into wilderness. So she brings a rich experience of the nature and how it helps to sustain itself. So in this call we are trying to get inspiration from the nature aspect. What learnings can we draw from nature to improve our life in the professional as well as personal aspect and sustain the improvement. I think so many times we try to bring about or we kickstart an improvement, but somewhere we lose track of things. This improvement is not up to a level that we want to sustain, or we lose steam along the way. So this is a space where we are, consciously trying to discuss how we initiate an improvement and then we sustain it over a long term. So this is a quick background about the calls and what we do, and this is actually the eighth call in the series. So we have had a series of calls before this where we categorically talked about the lean way of process improvement that is practiced in the organizations, and I think all of those calls are already available on our YouTube channel. And I'll request Elizabeth to just put in on the chat the link to our YouTube. So I'd welcome you to those who are joining for the first time to go and look at the recordings on of our previous calls, because this is a kind of a story that we have built together step by step. How should we really start an improvement initiative? How should we really measure the improvement, and how do we analyze? So we have really looked at step by step approach in these various calls preceding this call, and I'd invite you to really go to this YouTube channel and look at the previous calls just to get the connection. And on that note, I'd also like to share that we also have a website, which is www.leanbynature.org, where we really talk about the intent of these calls, and who we are, a bit of background about myself and Elizabeth, and uh, and of course the call recordings are also available on the website. And last but not the least, I'd invite you to subscribe to our link, so that you can automatically get updates regarding these calls and the subsequent information that we send. In case you are not able to attend, you get a recording of the calls. So all of that information is available to you if you just click on the last link, which is leanbynature.org. Join us. So thank you for kind of helping us be up to speed in terms of connecting. So as we have more people joining in, thank you so much. And those who are joining for the first time, we're just talking about a quick background about the calls. Right now, we are getting into a space of sharing our improvement journeys, whether it is with respect to quality initiatives, helping in the organizations that we work in, or in our own personal lives. Just a few ground rules for today's call. Right now, all the participants are on mute so that there's minimum background noise. However, I would welcome you to add your inputs on the chat. And while you are joining, I'd also request you to put a sentence of gratitude. What are you thankful about today? So just put it on the chat if you will. And And last thing I want to share is that this call is being recorded. So in case you don't want to be seen in the recording, I'd ask you to keep your video on off mode. But I'd welcome you to put in your questions, comments as we continue discussing on the chat. So, on that note, I will now hand it over to my colleague Elizabeth, who is going to walk us through her aspect of the nature journey that she has been exploring. So, over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Aman. So yeah, you already shared a little of what our journey looked like up until now, and last time we talked about okay, how does the whole improvement process look when we're looking at nature, and I shared a little about natural cycles and how all the daily and monthly and uni cycles affect greatly on what people, for example, animals or people living more nature connected lives might be doing at certain times of the year or day, and how we can use that also in building a process. And that's how I came up with, based on certain other things, but you have to check out the other video, um, a cycle that I want to share with you that has 8 steps that go around the natural cycle. And today we're going to talk about the observe and envision phases. And the next few weeks we're going to talk about the connect, the act and adapt, the strengthen, the share and teach, the integrate, and the mentor stage. And to look at it more, just check out our other video. Yeah, because we're gonna dive right into it. So looking at kind of the first step of realizing, okay, we want to change something, we want to improve something. Um, we first have to observe. So in nature, when, for example, an animal or a pack realizes, whoa, we don't have enough food, we have to expand our hunting grounds. They first observe, they're gonna walk around and observe, okay, where are the animals? Where do we need to go? How is the weather changing, the landscape changing when we're going this or that way? So there's a lot of observation happening in the beginning to kind of know what the hell's happening where we are. So it's also a kind of, okay, yeah, we're here right now. What's the state we're in right now? What are the other players involved doing? Like the plants or the landscape, they're all players, to so to speak. And so it's really important to, yeah, take a lot of time to observe and do that at different times of the day, because some animals are there in the morning but not during the day or in the afternoon, or at certain times of the year maybe even. So observation can take over years as well. And the same principle is also used in permaculture, where you want to recreate an ecosystem that sustains itself and plays together nicely. And so you have to know, okay, what are all the different plants that are already here? What are they doing? And how can we either recreate or introduce certain things to have that whole ecosystem grow? And there's a really interesting exercise that I want to share with you on that. And that's called the sit spot. And it's pretty simple. You basically go outside, find some spot in nature, preferably somewhere where no people walk past or something, but the own backyard also works if there's nothing else there. And you go to that same spot, preferably every day, at least every week, at different times of the day, and just sit there and observe. Do that at least half an hour would be better. And and just observe both what's going on inside of you, all the thoughts that are coming up. Um, Maybe even some good ideas come along, but mostly it's at some point your inner voice telling you, why the hell am I sitting here? I could do so much other stuff. And it's a kind of meditation as well, but at the same time you're observing your surroundings. You see, okay, that's the bird that comes here, and oh yeah, last time and the time before he came too, but not 3 weeks ago. Why didn't he come 3 weeks ago? And stuff like that. So when you're constantly going to that same spot over and over again, you're observing the differences. You see at certain times of the day they're here or not here, at certain times of the year. And of course, there's no like regularity that you can say, okay, that's why this is happening or that happening. Something is just random. Um, but you can still get to know that spot, that area very well, and you yourself calm down and can observe yourself as well through that process. And that same thing can also be applied to any other thing that you want to improve in your life or at work. Just kind of um, observe in a way the process that you're going through. For example, if you have some kind of pattern that you're always first when you come to work, you first get a coffee and talk with people, and that takes so much time, or I don't know what it is. You observe yourself. Okay, what's the idea behind it? Okay, and then as soon as you observe also your thoughts, you can then have that information to go forward into the rest of the process. And a short anecdote that I want to share also, when I was living in the wilderness for 2 months, it was a program where we had certain tasks to do, but it was really important because we had the focus of tracking. We needed to find out where the deer were. And so we always ran into the same area. Every morning we ran there and we explored the area and looked for tracks. And so if you go there every day and see, okay, yeah, those tracks, that's what, like, that same deer, there was a small path, and there was one track of deer that veered off the track somewhere. And the next day when we came there again, there were new tracks and went the same way. And so I kind of realized, that must be the same deer because it's taking the same route again. But the next day it wasn't there anymore. So why wasn't it there anymore? And then we found some other tracks that were a little farther behind, and to just have that to compare and realize, okay, well, that has to be connected, or this might not be connected, to just get a better idea of that. And that's really important, to know where we are in the moment before we start any improvement process. And that's kind of bringing us into the next step, which is the envision step. And that's also still not going into action, because first, before we start something, we know, okay, now we're here, we observe, now we're here. And that's kind of the lay of the land. And the next step is to figure out, okay, where do we want to go? And that's a lot about the envisioning. So for example, nature connected people, when they are about to go on a hunt, they take the evening before they go hunting to really envision the whole hunt that's going to happen the next day. So they feel into the animal that they're going to hunt. They move like the animal. That's kind of a dance sometimes, and it looks weird from the outside, but it's more of a connecting um, to that goal, that focus. Ah, okay, that animal, how is it? It's probably moving that way, or where would I find it? And and it's not so much in a rational thinking, but more into feeling into it. So you really imagine yourself being that animal, and that's kind of translatable into really feeling into that goal that you want to achieve, where you want to be, how you want to be, how you want to feel. And so it's not a cognitive thing where you say, oh, okay, yeah, I want to lose 10 kilos or whatever. It's more about, okay, how do I want to feel? How what would I want to do when I achieved it? um, where would I go? Who would I meet? How would I move? How would I feel? To really get into that mode of where what you're envisioning you want to go to. And um, yeah, it's the same also when you want to improve your relationship, either in the professional life to your customers or your colleagues, or even in the personal life to your family or friends. It's about first envisioning how you want to feel, but also envisioning and really feeling into how does that other person feel. Um, where are they? What are they doing? What do they wish and long for? And really feel into that, and imagine yourself to be that person. And then when you can imagine how they feel, how they think, what they long for, then you can create a much better connection to that person. So the envisioning part kind of connects you from your present to that goal or vision that you want to achieve, also from all aspects, all players that are involved. And yeah, so I want to just do a really short exercise on that as well. So if you want to close your eyes and just breathe and imagine that you're a cat, and that you have fur all over your body, and you have whiskers, and you have those pointy ears, and you sniff everything. Um, and you're walking along a village and looking for food. And you're hoping that possibly there's some rat nearby that you can hunt. And you're going past some houses, and there's nothing there. And then they're past the supermarket, and all of a sudden you smell something, and you smell garbage. And then you remember, I was hunting before, and when there was that garbage smell, there was something close by where rats really like to go. And so I go there. and and then you can also step out of that and into the rat and think, oh, okay, what would the rat do? Where would she want to go? And so that kind of adds to the whole puzzle. And I invite you to just play along with really feeling into that, with all the players involved when you're envisioning something. And yeah, just a short anecdote on my own personal life, that it was so fascinating when you can't really envision. You have an idea of, yeah, I want to achieve that, but you don't really know how you would feel then. You just have someone told you that it's so perfect and you need to do that, but you don't know. So for me, for example, sports and running was something, yeah, everybody tells you it's so healthy and whatever, um, but I just didn't see the point in it. And then through a training and a certain practice, I just got into running and forcing myself with willpower, to go running continuously. Um, and at some point, only recently, a few days ago, I realized I was feeling really low before. I had worked all day and then I went running, forced myself to go running. And when I came back, I was energized again. So I had that experience. Ah, okay, that's how I can feel after running. And that's what I now can connect to. And so now it's easier for me to hopefully to go running without needing so much willpower, because I can connect to that feeling of, oh, I felt so energized after running. So I will do that again. That was fun. And so that's kind of how it can transition from first just forcing yourself until you make at least one experience of how it can feel, and then you can envision to go further. So yeah, that's a short introduction of those two phases. And now I would go give over to you, Aman, of some reflections around how that connects to lean. And you're muted.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yes, I just realized that. I was so engrossed at being a cat that I forgot that I was a human. So thank you for the excellent kind of activity. And for a moment, it really felt energy flowing, and I had to really run after the cat. Yeah, it's a great insight, and I think we have all gathered today just to see what we can do to sustain improvements, what learnings we can draw from the lean management principles and nature to improve and to sustain the improvements that we are trying to do in our organizations and our personal lives. So, thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing the first two steps of the whole journey. And when you said observe first, before actioning, observe. I think this is really critical when I look at the process improvement methodology. When we start improving any project, usually the tendency is that we already know the solution. So there is a tendency to jump to the solution. But the lean principle or the lean way of process improvement says that when you start a project, don't go into improvement unless you measure the current state. So you define your project and then you measure the current state. Where are we right now? Where is the problem occurring? And on that, I'd just like to share a small tool which is called 5 Ws and 1 H. That's a very simple way to find out the observe thing, Elizabeth, that you mentioned. Where are we right now? So the 5 Ws stand for what is the problem. The second W is where the problem occurred, which machine the problem occurred, which place. The third W is when did the problem occur? Did it happen in the morning shift or the evening shift or whatever the time is? Who, the fourth W, who was there when the problem occurred? Why do we think the problem occurred? And then the 1H is how do we solve that? So if we really when we talk about observe, if we just attempt to answer these 6 questions, we come closer to the place where the problem originated, and that's where the solution would lie. So all of that resonates with me very well in terms of observing. All these 6 questions are just observing the facts. We are not going into any analysis. We are just observing where the problem occurred. So I think that those are a couple of things that resonated with me. And on the observe stage that you talked about, and when you talked about envision and feeling, how will we feel when we really achieve the goal? I think that is a great insight as well, because in lean approach of process improvement, usually when we define a project in the first stage, we define the target as well, where we want to be. So where are we right now? Where do we want to be? What is the timeline? All of that is done in the defined phase. However, there is a provision of updating the target once we cross the measure phase. When we really measure where we are, we come to know really, how difficult it will be to really achieve the target. We don't want to have a target which is unachievable. So when we come to the analyze phase, we can go back at the define phase and redefine the target based on how we feel right now, how realistic were we, did we over kind of aim for the target. So I think those that feeling aspect really comes in when we get some data, we collect a baseline where we are, and we come to know exactly how much the improvement can happen in the time period that we have. So those are the couple of thoughts that I resonated on these two steps. And the last point, Elizabeth, that I have on my mind, especially when you did that wonderful activity of the being a cat and trying to look for the rat, and what it will do now, and you try to be proactive and preempt that. What resonated in me is the six senses, or the five senses that we have. The sight, the hear, the touch, the smell. So the moment we start engaging our senses in what we are trying to do, I think that's where we start getting uh, closer to where we want to be. And so that's additional insight in terms of using our senses to really observe the situation. I think that helps in both the observing and the envisioning. So those are a couple of thoughts. So yeah, I'd welcome people on the call to put in their questions, if any, or comments on the chat. And meanwhile, Elizabeth, if you have any afterthoughts, I'll love to hear them.
Yeah, thank you so much for adding that input, because a lot of times nature is just very intuitively doing something. So it helps to have that structure of, okay, what questions do I actually ask when observing? Because I can observe a lot, but what do I want to focus on? So it needs that more focused view of, okay, what questions do I ask, to really get into that observation mode in a much better and more structured and focused way. So that was, yeah, it's a great addition, and it just kind of fits perfectly into everything. And yeah, um, also giving a little of an outlook of what we're going to talk next time, which is going to be actually in 4 weeks, because I'm going into the wilderness next 2 weeks, or 2.5 weeks. Is that we're going to talk about the connect and the act phase, or act or adapt phase, because there is what, okay, now we know where we are and where we want to go, and so how get do we get into that more active thing of the improvement phase. So that's what we're gonna mainly focus on. I think it's the 18th of February. It's gonna be our next call. So yeah, thank you so much for joining, all of you, and I hope to see you next time again. Since there are no other questions.